I think for a few of us here, obviously not for people like Wahid, but I think for some people in Britain who worry about and who talk about what the government does overseas, I think for a while some of us maybe forgot about Afghanistan a bit after the invasion of Iraq. That was where all our attention was, and suddenly in the last couple of years now, mainly because of the insurrection in Helmand, our attention is fully on it. And what we kind of missed in that time, those of us who weren't really paying attention, was the real intensification of resentment that the vast majority of people in Afghanistan feel for the American occupation and the British occupation and their puppet government. Their own safety being a threat from that occupation army and the puppet Afghan army. So it's now common for people to have things happen like they'll be at a wedding, and because there's a large number of them together, and maybe a country where there's guns everywhere, guns aren't just used for bad things, people just pull them out sometimes at parties and fire them off. It's quite common for wedding parties to be fired on, for large gatherings of people to be fired at by occupation troops. And these are the types of things that we don't see in our media. Every time there's a suicide bombing by the Taliban, we see that, and we're led to believe that that's the only reason that Afghans are killed. That's a small part of the picture. I mean, the Taliban want to take control of the country and want everybody to support them. There's no movement that wanted to do that would just go about randomly bombing the population in markets in the way it's put to us. But if you occupy a country, especially a country where the population don't want you there, then you have to use terror tactics. You have to raid people's houses. You have to break up all demonstrations, and you have to put people in prison for speaking out against your occupation, and that's what our government in America have been doing. And that's gotten worse, especially in the last year. From the experience of Iraq, the American military thought that all they had to do to break an insurgency and to solidify their rule was send even more troops. They thought if they just send even more in, if they send a few thousand, that'll be the end of the problem. I think what they're finding in Afghanistan is they could double the numbers again and double it again, and eventually at some point they will be beaten. It's not a place where the people are too brave to be beaten, and it's not a place where they belong to be. So ultimately they are going to have to leave. The SSP is unique in the Scottish political landscape and in Britain, in fact, because we're the only ones who are openly saying that carnage and this wrong occupation has to end now. The human cost is too high. For the NATO troops, the number of dead is over 1,700 now, I believe, including over 250 British troops. And sad though it is, you have to look back now and question, what did they die for? What did their deaths achieve? Unfortunately, very little, other than revealing to us the bankruptcy of our government's policy. It's a situation which is becoming worse and worse by the day. For about 2 years now, there's been a sprawl into Pakistan and a more or less secret war going on, which is quite similar to what happened in Laos and Cambodia during the Vietnam War, where despite no declaration of war and no right to be there, the American government have been sending planes to bomb villages and wreak havoc. A comrade of mine, Anas, is from Peshawar and was visiting home in the summer, and when I tried to ask him about it, he, despite being a very eloquent and intelligent person, someone who talks a lot as well, didn't even want to talk about it other than to say, I'm from Peshawar, the first day I got there there were rocket attacks on my village. So clearly what's happening on the current road that the government is settling is things are getting worse, more and more people are dying, and it's for nothing. The issue of Al-Qaeda was addressed very, very clearly and categorically by General, I think it's John McChrystal, who's the head of the US Army in Afghanistan. On September the 11th last year, he was given a historical interview. He was asked about whether the war was working and are Al-Qaeda being beaten in Afghanistan. And his answer was, there is no major presence of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, it's not where they are, and if that was the reason for the war, then that was wrong, quite clearly. The significant thing as well for America is that it's now completely attached to President Obama, despite the hopes of many people that he was going to bring about serious change and would help to establish peace. In fact, he's been on a policy of sending more troops to Afghanistan and continuing the occupation, which is a shame. But it's not all doom and gloom, despite the way we've been going on. There are really inspiring and encouraging examples of resistance in Afghanistan and here. There's a soldier named Joe Glenton. I don't know if you've seen him in the media or if you're aware of what he's been up to. He is a soldier who served in Afghanistan for the British Army, was home on home leave, and he's refused to go back. He said, I won't fight, I knew when I joined the army I might have to fight, but I didn't expect to be sent to occupy a country where the people don't want us there and we're not doing any good. He's refused to go back, and is now currently in prison in Colchester in what's called I think it's called a military training centre or something like that, which is double speak for a military prison. And he's taken a very brave stand, and it's one that it's the tip of an iceberg of increased resistance to the war that's happening inside their own military. Many soldiers who have gone out, who have seen the reality, they don't want to go back because they know they're not doing any good, and it's only becoming more dangerous for them and for everyone else. And in Afghanistan as well, there's a woman, a female politician, who's only just started to receive some publicity over here in recent months, but has been well known in Afghanistan for years. A young woman named Malalai Joya, who has been denounced by clients of America as an infidel and a communist. So before I even knew anything about her, I thought she sounded quite cool. She's been a very prominent critic of first and foremost of the occupation and the puppet government, but also she is critical of the Taliban on things like women's rights and so on. She's I don't know if she's a member of, but she's certainly associated with at times the Revolutionary Association of Women of Afghanistan, who did a bit of research on them. I found a particularly good quote from a statement they made a few years ago. They said, "The freedom of a nation is to be achieved by itself. Similarly, the real emancipation of women can be realised only by themselves. If that freedom is bestowed by others, it may be seized and violated at any time." I think that's the attitude that we need to bear in mind when it comes to whether or not you can impose human rights, or whether our governments have any interest in even doing that at all.